Hello again and welcome to Herd Immunity News. I'm Marcus Botzer. Today we've got the great pleasure in welcoming back Mr. Dave Atherton. Dave is a political commentator and he's a regular star on Friday nights with Sebastian and Ash, and he's a good friend at Talk TV.
Yeah.
He's a good friend of Herd Immunity News. Find him and all his great posts and great work at Dave Atherton 20. We'll leave all the stuff, all the links up for Dave, but let me just say, Dave Atherton, how are you, sir?
I'm very good. I'm what's the word I'm looking for? I'm, stiffening the upper lip and against all the strife that's coming at us at the moment. And I've got so much grief today. And I've been getting so much grief all week actually from my many various supporters. But anyway, and trolls. But no, I'm fine. What about yourself?
I'm doing really good. I'm doing really good. There is a cause for optimism, which we'll come on to a bit later on. But what's intrigued me is one of your excellent posts that you've got on is a suggestion, and it's gaining momentum rapidly. I think we've got over 10 to 15,000 votes for this now, and that's an initiative to stop all immigration for 5 years. Could you elaborate a little bit on this and how we'd actually make this happen? Thanks.
Right. Well, that's an extremely good point there. Well, I'll just have a quick look, see if what I've done has worked at all. I think within a week or so, within a few days or so, it's got up to 10,300 votes. No, blimey, it's clicked round to 11,500 the time we've been here. So that's going extremely well. So they're obliged to reply to it. Enough is enough. Whether it's illegal immigration, whether it's legal immigration, enough is enough. And we, as a nation, we deserve a bit of peace and quiet, not have to worry about people coming over. Youngsters might get an opportunity to rent their own property, buy their own home, have families of their own. And we can't do it under the present regime. I think we've got to build something like 500,000 new houses a year to keep pace with everybody that's coming in. I think we're building about 100,000, something like that, maybe 200,000 with the following wind. And so, look at where I live in London, in southwest London. All you ever see being built is 1 and 2 bedroom flats. You never see any houses or anything like that. And you're never going to have two or three kids in something like that, and it'll just be left to I think in London, 50% of all housing now is social housing is given over to migrants. They're the ones given the 4-bedroom council houses. They're the ones who can have some kiddies, and we don't. So, it's an awful situation we're at the moment. And, I don't get too depressing about it, but we are potentially looking at the end of Britain as a culture, Britain as a race, in my opinion. And a 5-year moratorium to get to on all immigration, maybe have a little bit for special entrepreneurs and people like that. Well, we're talking about 10, 20,000 a year, as was promised by David Cameron back in 2010. And the Conservative Party has lied through their teeth consistently now for best part of 14 years. Where I live, it's extremely expensive, exclusive area I live in. 2-bedroom terraced house will cost you 900,000 to £1 million. Even I'm seeing burqas on the streets. And I'm seeing women with hijabs. No, I presume that they live in the council house at the bottom of the road, somewhere around that way, or the council's bought property round here, and they obviously don't have jobs. It's the stereotypical husband and wife pushing a pushchair or pram up the road, and there's but most of the young people around here do have children, and they've probably got particularly well paid jobs, but the bottom line is, without severely restricting immigration, I think, frankly, Britain as a culture, Britain as a country is finished. I'm sorry. It's going to take 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but, we will become a Lebanon. We will become a Texas. We will become, it's all heading west. By the way, I found a good example historically of what immigration does to a company, Lebanon. And I don't know if you heard of Bridget Gabriel. She's a Lebanese Christian heritage lady who moved to America because of the dangers in her own country. And she and the background to the country was Lebanon was a Christian, relatively liberal country throughout the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and coming into the 70s. And after the 1948 war with the Palestinians, the 1967 war with the Palestinians, millions flooded into Lebanon, and the Christian majority became a minority. And from 1975 to 1990, they fought a vicious civil war against each other. And frankly, I don't want to be sort of, what's the word, over the top, or exaggerating, or but we are looking potentially at a particularly long period of civil unrest in this country. Also, I call it civil unrest, and that's basically our country will be ruined. There's some things I can say in private, but I won't do them in public. But when you switch the recording off, I'll tell you.
Well, Dave, for those people. For those viewers that will agree with you, how do we affect that change? How does that happen? How do we stop all immigration, barring maybe 20,000 people, experts or doctors or surgeons or whatever in a special skills occupation list? How do we affect that change? Because the only political party that's even charting and polling right now is Reform. And Reform have a one in, one out policy. And which has been disseminated recently by Paul Golding of Britain First, who said that really just means for all the Brits you lose, you just have those that have ideologically opposite coming into the country. So how do we affect that change, Dave?
Exactly. Just very briefly, this is the sad thing at the moment. You find yourself agreeing with those of the genuine far right. And that's the thing. And you do sort of begin to sort of listen to what they're going to say to a certain extent. Obviously I'll listen to anybody, but but absorbing it as well, maybe to a certain extent. I suppose there's theory and practice. Let's do the theoretical stuff at the moment. Theoretically, we need regime change in this country. The existing political establishment is not fit for purpose. Not only the major political parties, but also the civil service as well. I think the civil service has been the most pernicious and nasty influence on this country. They're the people that, for example, remember when Priti Patel had to eat a little bit of shit, for want of a better phrase, and she had to read this paper out from the Home Office, whereby the majority of paedophiles in this country were white rather than Pakistani. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay, fine. That paper was heavily influenced, but I believe it was written by Dr. Ella Cockbain. And certainly, from what I've read of it, most of the references are her work. There's also a guy called, his first name's Wack, I think it's Celeb's Eunice. That's her number two. And he's also done similar papers like that as well. And they're both Marxists. And they are not objective academics. They are political activists, parading as academics. And so I'm pretty sure they wrote that. I think they saw what Priti Patel articulated out that day was certainly was what they'd written. I think they were the authors of that report as well. And the point is, who appointed them to write those papers? Well, presumably the post office, the Home Office did that. Yes. The Home Office are the people that decide what LGBT things are taught in schools. The civil service is behind the appointment of leftist and liberal people who infect every crevice of our society and every crevice of our institutions. That really has to stop. There has been slight changes when Lord Shawcross his report into the Prevent Extremism programme. Again, he was hugely critical that sort of decent people like Jacob Rees-Mogg was smeared as a far right anti-immigration fascist, and Rod Liddell as well. They got that information from Hope Not Hate, which is an extreme, I mean, you really do mean extreme left-wing organisation. But these people are appointed, they're taken seriously when it comes to writing reports and what have you. Something like on the Prevent Programme or MI5 terrorism watch list, 43,000 are Muslims and something less than 5,000 are British white people. And I think in the last 10 years, 97 people have died in terrorist incidents. Only 2 have been committed by white people. 95 have been committed by Islamists, Muslims.
Well, that was the findings of the Prevent. Remember the government funded the Prevent. It was an examination of terrorism moving forward in the UK, where it's coming from. And they said it was going to come from white supremacists. 2%, less than 2% of any crimes that would be categorised as acts of domestic terror were committed by whites.
So someone like Tommy Robinson will be one of those 5,000 on MI5's watch list. Probably Paul Cawley as well. Who knows? Maybe me. I'm not going to go out the street with a bomb strapped to myself. The worst thing I do is write a nasty tweet.
Well, that could be enough. That could be enough, Dave. Can I just read out a definition for you, please? And you give me your thoughts on this definition. This is from the United Nations. It's called cultural genocide. Cultural genocide or ethnocide is the attempted destruction of a group's culture, religion, and identity. It is a coercive act imposed by a dominant group on a weaker minority group. Cultural genocide has been associated with imperialism and, more importantly, with settler colonialism. Can we replace the word and term warm and fuzzy woke with either cultural Marxism or cultural genocide?
Well, indeed. I think the only thing there that I can disagree with in that United Nations statement is we have a situation where rather the majority is oppressing the minority. We've got the minority oppressing the majority.
Well, in certain areas of London, we are the minority.
Yeah, true. Leicester, and Manchester,
Coventry,
Birmingham,
Labour strongholds that we'll come on to about the acts that were coming in. So it's a very, very complicated situation to try and replace the Home Office. And as you correctly say, it's through every single established organisation in the UK, the schools, churches, the police, the armed forces. To touch on the armed forces. What did you think of the news? You've maybe known this for a while, that the British Army is now allowing Muslim soldiers to pray 5 times a day, regardless of the situation.
If I was a soldier, I would refuse. Well, you probably can't, but theoretically, I would like to think I would refuse to serve with a soldier like that who insisted upon praying 5 times a day. That is a danger. That's a danger to him, to himself, and his fellow soldiers and his colleagues. That has to be banned. Not that you get many Muslims signing up for the British Army, because it's written in the Quran that when you go to a foreign country which is majority non-Muslim, you are not meant to fight for that country because you might end up fighting fellow Muslims. But to answer your question, that is absolutely disgraceful. And and there's another government minister asleep at the wheel. The only reason Grant Shapps has all suddenly bent out of shape over this is for the simple reason he's been caught out. The Daily Telegraph have dug up the story. Oh dear, I'm outraged. I'm going to do something about it. He bloody well won't. He really won't do anything about it. No, and the fact that other retired officers, probably feel reasonably safe to make a comment now have criticised all recent moves and also the positive discrimination, if positive is the right word. This country, I'm sorry, I don't want to go away and jump off the nearest building. This country really is in a really bad state. It's in dire situation.
It is. That's why I'm putting it to you. You're being quite polite and you're letting these people off the hook by saying they're asleep at the wheel. Others would call them fifth columnists. Others would call them what? Well, I'm sorry, Dave. I'm sorry, but when you put the interests of a foreign country over and above
Yeah.
This one, you are a traitor to this
That's
country.
treason, isn't it? Yeah, that
It's
is treason indeed, yeah.
Any
Yeah.
act against this country. With open borders, Dave, you have a situation where you could argue for manslaughter. You could argue for charges of corporate manslaughter. If you're allowing people, knowingly allowing people in, like the acid attacker in Croydon, like the killer of little Emily Jones, like the murderer of Lee Rigby, the Manchester bombers, these are all people that were given amnesty in this country. And they were allowed in despite a catalogue of sexual crimes, terror attacks. I'm sorry, we have to start holding these people, the civil servants, the House of Lords. We have to start holding them accountable.
Actually, we might want to get a legal opinion whether we can bring out a private prosecution for manslaughter.
Indeed, because where does this end? Where does this end?
It's a case of I think there's also within the British establishment there is a substantial number of people who hate what we've done. What I think they are implied racists. They see how much better and superior our culture is compared to theirs, and the only way they can deal with it is they slake their conscience by allowing them to come in. They see that they're turning the places in Britain into violent hellholes and shitholes and things like that, but they still feel guilty about it. Still let it go on. But they're the ones who are the racists because they know full well there's a difference in culture and behaviours between us and many of the people coming in. Not all, but many. And they should be the ones holding their heads in shame, and they should be the ones who should be held account. Yes, and that is one of the things I'm doing at the moment. Actually, is for example, the RNLI, Royal National Lifeboat Institute, they've got immunity given to them by the Home Office that if they ever get involved in rescuing somebody, it all goes wrong, they'll never be prosecuted for it. If I was Home Secretary, the first thing I would do would be to take that immunity away, and also to the Border Force as well. That's the first thing I'd do. So you go out there, mate. You're the one facing jail. So that'll probably concentrate a few minds, but that'll be challenged in the courts and that'll be dragged on for years and years and years. But yeah, as you say, we have a fifth column in here that is bold, that is very much involved in the cultural destruction of this country. The BBC, Anne Boleyn is black. You're insulting my intelligence.
It is disgusting, and it's an act of racism, and it's cultural genocide. This warm and fuzzy. I'll use my own words and my own terminology, and I won't enforce my dictates on you. I'm not an EU commissioner. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So you want to call it woke, and it's very warm and fuzzy. But we've come along so far, Dave, that this woke ideology is allowing sympathisers with paedophilia on channels like GB News, and I'm referring to the leftist commentator and star of Loose Women and Loose-Brained and Slack-Mouthed rent-a-gob Amy Nicole Turner.
Yeah,
if that's her name.
She
sympathises with paedophiles. So all this great work that's been done by groups that are entrapping these guys, doing the work that the cops aren't doing, you put posts out on these people coming from overseas, they're caught grooming, showing pictures of themselves, and they're caught bank of rights, and the cops have to pick them up. She's sympathising with them, and then this woke ideology starts to tiptoe down to the Peter Tatchell level.
Yeah.
And this is on record of legalising paedophilia and sex child abuse. Where is this going, Dave?
Well, this is what we're being softened up about, isn't it? This is why all these drag artists are going into schools, reading books, and this is the LGBT agenda going on at schools at the moment. I'm sorry, a 7 and 8 year old doesn't need to know about oral sex and anal sex. I'm sorry,
Dave. What would our grandparents think? What would our parents think?
I know. Yeah, we think we're all a bunch of perverts. It is. It's a softening up that to get the age of consent lowered, the softening up for the acceptance and then the legalization of paedophilia. We all sound like conspiracy theorists and nutters, and we're all putting our tinfoil hats on. But this is where it's going. I've had it up to here.
Yeah, it's happening in real time. It's happening on platforms that are regulated by Ofcom, and I'm going to hammer GB News on this because we'll call it out. I'm not regulated by fucking anyone, right? Apart from God.
Yeah.
They're having paedophile sympathisers on the show, and this is where it starts. You've got Peter Tatchell on regularly, and this is but Lawrence Fox is booted off for saying he wouldn't shag someone who had said repeatedly that she wouldn't shag him.
Sure.
Mark Stein is kicked off for reporting on the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are suffering from JAB injuries, and Andrew Bridgen's done great work as well in exposing the number of people who've died from it.
Well, he did.
We need to start calling it out.
Yeah, on GB News, wasn't Richie Sunak talk out? Wasn't Richie Sunak, in trouble last night? And to be fair to GB News, to include that question, I thought was extremely brave of them. I think it's probably fair to say that there's going to be some fallback fallout of that. Sorry, that question was allowed in. So I can imagine one of Richie Sunak's special advisors backstage was having a right go at the producer for that. I should imagine. But yeah, I really do think it is time that we started speaking a little bit more frankly. I think in some ways we're beginning to make some progress. Although day after day after day, we're having even more obscenities like the Amy Lakel stuff. I think as well the fact she's got so much grief over it. I think a lot of people will think of, because people are quite shameless in this country about not being cowed into accepting paedophilia, and people will always speak out against it. It's one of the great truths and the great things that we can still say without fear of being cancelled. But how long that's going to last, I've got no idea.
Well, I got a lot of shit over it. I got a lot of shit over it from the gay and lesbian mob, who actually are now standing up for Amy's right to say that paedophiles deserve sympathy and compassion and understanding. Lawrence Fox retweeted my tweet, and he jumped on it. Dan Wooten sent me a little message on it, and all these people. Mark Stein has communicated with me in the past. Lalani Dowling, who's one of Mark Stein's co-hosts, or was, they all got behind it and said, Jesus, we've got to do something about this, because we are tiptoeing along this road. And Ofcom are behind all this stuff. Ofcom are giving it the big thumbs up. It's very dangerous.
Sure. When I do my show on Friday night on Talk TV, you can tell when I'm drifting from the Ofcom line. I immediately get interrupted. You can't say that sort of thing, And but this really have to stay as we are, and keep ourselves, hold the line, as they say, on this issue, and never ever give in. And shame on the LGBT lobby for even having an ounce of sympathy for her. When gay acts and what have you when marriage and the various acts of homosexuality were being passed, there was always the sort of the inference from the anti-gay lobby about you associate homosexuality with paedophilia, which is probably by and large quite wrong. Probably by and large quite wrong. But the point is, with a lot of the trans stuff, you're rather proving their point.
They've all been lumped in together.
They've
all been lumped in together. Transgender is now lumped in. And as you saw with the SNP had a huge problem with this, with Jana Cherry. Jana Cherry, she's an out and proud lesbian woman, SNP, former MP. She was absolutely slated for her comments saying that the transgenderism was now infringing on young women's rights. And this all backfired on Nicola Sturgeon. It ended up being her undoing. Putting a lesbian, not a lesbian, that gets quite complicated. Was Isla Bryson a lesbian because she identified as a woman and still fancied other women with a boner? Who knows? But the fact is that the SNP stood by this. The SNP thought this was great.
Well, this is groupthink, isn't it? No, this is what groupthink is all about. That's this is the current way of thinking. I have to sort of think and say in the right manner. So God save us from those people. And do you know something? If it wasn't an issue for lesbians and women, I think the LGBT lobby would have got away with it. I really think they would have got. I really think they got away with it. But because it was women, and we can't. Well, we look at the way. Why you say it? Look at the way J.K. Rowling has been monstered and tried to, and she is cancelled in many ways. You know, Harry Potter event, she's never invited. You know, it's a bloody book. Whatever.
So we can say that that's definitely not woke. This is cultural genocide. Another great post that you've put out, Dave, was one on a police officer, and there's a white police officer attempting to arrest two black Christian ladies for silent prayer. Was it?
Right, you might be confusing two things here. In Birmingham, there's an abortion clinic where a woman has been arrested twice for literally praying in your head. And the policeman asked, "Are you praying?" The anti-abortionists aren't allowed to. They've got to stand a certain distance away from the abortion clinic. I think that's wrong. That's an infringement of free speech, but there you go. That's the law. And she stands a certain distance away from the abortion clinic.
Yeah.
And she's sitting there, you know, sort of head bowed, eyes closed. Sure. And the Birmingham police officer went up and said, "Are you praying?" And she said, "Silently in my head."
Yes.
And he arrested her. You know, and he arrested her. So,
which was illegal and unlawful.
Yeah, it was illegal. Yeah.
No, I'm referring to a tweet that you put out about 6 hours ago now, and it's a group of black Christians advised to move on by the Metropolitan Police.
I thought that was the one you're referring to, but
that's in London.
But they were openly professing their faith in the street. They were openly professing.
That's not a protected area. That's not one of those zones outside an abortion clinic.
No. It's like again like that black Christian lady in Oxford Street.
Oh yeah, the keyboard player.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, no, exactly. You know, same old, different jockey, and they were just being vocal Christians. They didn't appear to have any amplification with them. Even if they did, you know, you're walking down the street within a minute, you know, you can't hear it anymore.
Yeah.
And the policeman threatened them with arrest for I think it's the Malicious Communications Act, whereby they might be causing harassment, alarm, and distress.
And there'll be nowhere to pray soon if you're a Christian, because there are tens of thousands of churches being culled.
Well,
in
I know
Scotland,
that
Northern Ireland, Wales, and in England, on the trajectories. If you look at the trajectories,
the
UK is on the trajectory to be an Islamic state.
Well, indeed, yeah, many are actually being converted to mosques, and so not well. I think the police officers, plural, were actually breaking the law. I cannot see any reason why that can be the case. The only reason I can think they're doing is because they don't want to incite the Muslim mob. That is the only reason I can think of.
You're on the road then to take over.
Yeah, you're right. You know, to make your point, we all had. Well, I said today, we are the boiling frogs on the way to an Islamist state. You know, let's have a quick look. Let's make a list of things you can't do these days. Show an image of Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a movie on at the cinema that the Muslims don't like, it's not shown. The burqa is a protected characteristic, and every time the government brings out any sort of animal welfare legislation, you know, I want to have nothing to do with it. I just say, until you ban halal slaughter, you have no right to pass any further animal welfare laws. And the reason they're doing it is, and the reason that they're so they oppress Muslims, Christians, is for the simple reason they know that there are not all, but there is a substantial proportion of Muslims in this country who don't believe in the rule of law. They believe in the rule of the mob. Now, whereby street justice and what's the word? Forces strength.
But what happens is eventually that all these people that have stood by and let open borders happen, eventually they get caught up in the spread of this hate. Mike Freer, former Justice Minister, had his office petrol bombed. Now, no one can ever say that is a right thing to do, but I'm sorry, Mike Freer stood by and watched the open borders. Mike stood by and voted for Brexit to be kicked to the curb.
Sure.
Eventually,
Yeah.
the chickens come home to roost.
Yeah. Well, until it happens to them, they don't really give a shit, do they? You
No.
know, and you know, and frankly, Freer is a coward for throwing in the towel in the next election. Absolute coward.
Yeah.
You know, as far as I would have said, well, can I confirm I am standing for this seat yet again? Do your bloody worst, mate. You know, do your worst on that. And you know, it's like, you know, I get so much grief on Twitter, and every time I get it, I'm always polite with these people. You know, thank you for your comment. Have a nice day. And,
yeah,
you know,
fuck off, you cunt, is probably what you'd want to say. Yeah.
Actually, I've got a way of doing it. I've got a way of writing it. You know,
see you next Tuesday.
That as well. And
well,
how I write it is.
Yeah, you're nicer than me. You're a lot warmer and fuzzier and cuddlier.
Yeah, I know. One of the things I've learned about mainstream media and being in politics, you can still say the same thing, but you have to say it in a different way. But you still effectively say the same. What I do is, you know, if something, this is why I write. If something's outraged me, normally I've got lots of four-letter words going round in my head. Some begin with F, some begin with C, some begin with W. I usually go to my senses and write.
Okay.
I must keep a civil tongue about it. Full stop.
Look. Yeah. Before you go, I want your opinions on the by-elections coming up, and I want to ask you a few questions about Mr. Richard Tice, and get your opinions on Mr. Richard Tice. Now, what would you like first, to talk about the by-elections or good old Richard Tice? What would you like?
Let's go by-elections, because I'm not up to speed on that. I want to get the shitty bit out of the way first of all.
Let's get the shit out of the way. The Peter Bone, unfortunately named a Brexiteer. On all surfaces, a decent chap. Everyone's innocent until proven guilty. And you could say he's part of a witch hunt to get him out, like Priti Patel, Dominic Raab, Suella Braverman, anyone that stands for anything right-wing within the Conservative Party dog meat. Right?
Sure.
So anyway, we've got the betting in, the latest betting, and we are not sponsored by Oddsmaker or William Hill, not yet. But we have the odds in, if you'd like them, for Wellingborough.
Yeah.
Labour are coming in at 1-14 odds on favourite to win. Conservatives at 12-1, with Reform at 12-1, with Ben Habib, who we have interviewed and is a friend of Heard Immediate News. What's the prediction then for Wellingborough?
I don't think enough Conservative voters have seen the light. They might be on the road to Damascus, but they haven't seen the light yet.
The light between Rishi Sunak's ears.
yeah, exactly. The problem we have in this country is 80% of the people. It's probably not nice or correct to dismiss them as sort of being, stodgy and things like that. But I hope you understand what I'm saying. It's down to 20% activists like ourselves, who have a clear vision of what we want to do. Now, I've offered my services to Mr. Tice for the next general election. I think the Reform Party can either do two things. They will help destroy the Conservative Party, and with a bit of luck, maybe we can have Nigel Farage as the unifying character here. As the unifying character of the sensible wing of the Conservative Party, which I think they've got about 300 MPs. Apparently, the One Nation Tories is about 100, and so the reasonable Tories are about 200. So it's only about a third of a bunch of idiots. But unfortunately, the One Nation Tories are the ones who've got the most power and influence within the party. And so, if hopefully Reform can pick up an MP or two at least. I really hope that might be the case. And looks like a Labour government is inevitable. Although looking at the mess that's going on in Rochdale at the moment, I'm not convinced. Actually, it's all the wheels are beginning to fall off, aren't they?
Well, on Wellingborough, you're going with the odds-on favourite Labour to win, and Ben Habib. If Ben Habib comes second, that is an incredible result. If he beats the Tories, that is a landslide. That is a victory in its own right, is it not?
Indeed, yeah. Well, the joke is, maybe the Tories just stand down to give Ben Habib a clear run.
Well, why not? Why not?
Well,
if you added the votes together, that's it. So you brought us on a nice little segue into Rochdale. Now, Rochdale is a clusterfuck. Excuse my French, but it really is.
for the Labour Party.
That is the Labour Party. You have got the candidate who was going to stand, Mr. Azhir Ali, has been deposed. Now, this is a flip-flopping, classic flip-flopping by Mr. Indecisive, Captain Chaos himself, Keith Glitter Starmer, as he's lovingly known at Herd Immunity News in our office.
Sure.
He backed the man. He said, yes, he's entitled to his views. He's not a conspiracy theorist. It's all possible. But then he crossed the line and he said the word Jewish. No. That's case closed. And you've got George Galloway waiting in the wings. Old George, Brexiteer, anti-Scottish independence. We all loved him for that. Brexit, he did a fantastic job. He's outspoken, incredible orator. But can George Galloway win?
Do you know something? I think he's got a sporting chance. I think I looked up the demographics. I think something like 20-25% of Rochdale is Muslim. So I think it's about 70% white. I think it is. But yeah, I think he might have a sporting chance. Although don't think George Galloway has got much image or pull with the white constituents in Rochdale. That's the problem. But I think Labour will squeak in. But have you seen the latest?
The latest odds. The latest odds. Herd Immunity News is brought to you by William Hill. Gamble honestly, gamble fairly, and that's from Dave Atherton as well. Yeah, dodgy Dave and mysterious Marcus. We'll have it away with your money. All right, you're not dodgy at all. I'll say that. Right, here are the odds, ladies and gentlemen. Eyes down for a full house. The favourite to win the 2024 by-election in Rochdale is the Workers' Party, George Galloway. He is the favourite at 10 to 11. Labour coming in at 11 to 10. Reform at 25 to 1. Lib Dems at 33 to 1. And the Conservatives trailing along at the back, only beating the Greens. They're at 50 to 1.
Blimey. Right,
I think he'll take it. I think he'll take it, personally.
Well, do you know what George Galloway could well be? Here's an interesting thing to discuss.
Yeah.
George Way might be the gateway drug, metaphorically speaking, let me quickly add, into Islamic parties in this country.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's the acceptable face to the British electorate because he's white and he's Scottish and things like that. And and well done, he's never had a drink, he tells us. And he's blocked me on Twitter. And he's one of the first major people that blocked me, actually.
What was that over? Why did he block you on Twitter?
Oh, I was quite rude. To be fair, I was quite rude in my early days on Twitter. I've only learned to be a little bit more diplomatic as I got older. But no, because he will be the acceptable face of the. You say the Workers' Party. He's more the Muslim Party. He's the Workers' Muslim Party, and. What I think, if George Galloway gets elected, I think that will embolden and encourage other Muslim groups in Muslim-oriented constituencies to form their own political parties or have a pan-political party.
So they can join the workers. They can join the Workers' Party, Dave.
Yeah, I know. Well, the Workers' Party could become, a bit like the same way that the National Workers' Party of Germany changed their name to the National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany.
Don't mention the war.
Yeah, I know. Well, it was 1921 actually. So, by the way, if you ever, very quickly, I don't want to bore everybody with history too much, but I've looked into it. What happens in 1921 when what became the Nazi Party was in its early foundations post World 2 years after World War One. They wanted to produce a manifesto which also appealed to the socialists and the communists, as well as the Social Democrats. And so they adopted economic socialist policies, like redistribution of wealth, taking out profits from large companies and distributing to the poor, and redistributing land to the poor as well.
Mm.
Now, if you look at all, there's 5 or 6 economic clauses there. They're all socialist. There was not one free market clause in there. So that's the reason they became the National Socialists. And so it's fair to say that the Nazi Party was a socialist party. Anyway, I digress. So
George Galloway, no. Can I just say on George Galloway,
yeah.
He was on the right side of the argument on Brexit. He was on, for us, he was on the right side of the argument about Scottish independence.
Yeah.
He's on the right side of the argument about net zero. He wants it completely scrapped altogether. Sure. He is on the right side of the argument when you look at peace and you look at conflict. Yes. You look at you look at responses. He is against the war in the Ukraine. He hasn't jumped on the bandwagon of the Tobias Ellwood absolute insanity, and he destroyed Tobias Ellwood in the Oxford Oxford Debating Society. He absolutely went on the floor with him. He's an incredible orator. Yeah. He shakes things up. Where a lot of people will have concern with is his associations with some extremist groups, but he will shake things up. And you could say overall, it is a bloody good thing that there might be somebody in there who could shake the shit out of both Labour and the Conservatives.
Well, yes, that I do take your point. I was quite hostile to your point in the first instance, but since you sort of kind of explained it, I'm a little bit less hostile. So again, could it be a catalyst for regime change? That could be encouraged, but trouble with regime changes, isn't it a case of the king is dead, long live the king? Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Could they be? It's like the Arab Spring. The people that came to power, in the wake of the Arab Spring, were just as bad, if not worse, than the people that took over. We're sort of, this is sort of the rock and the hard place kind of thing. No, I think certainly people like Richard Tice and the Reform Party, I think would do a lot of good for this country. I think he would shake up the centre right policies of this country, and I think as well. One of the things about Maggie Thatcher when she came to power in 1979, because she had firm policies on immigration. She had particularly firm policies on immigration, and she immediately diminished the influence, the influence of the far right. And the far right disappeared overnight when she came to power because she had firm immigration policies. No, same with Richard Tice. Despite he might be kind of seen as a sort of a not extreme right, but well to the right type character.
A lot of people think he's a centrist and he's a man of the establishment. And as I said before, Paul Golding, the leader of Britain First, has come out and, for a lot of people, exposed this one in, one out strategy because it's a replacement. It's a backing of a replacement policy. Well, your strategy of having a blanket ban for 5 years is a good one. Sure. But who's talking about deportations? President Trump. Trump over in America. What's going to happen with Trump, and how much influence will Trump have over the next British Prime Minister? Or will Trump be allowed to be president?
Sure. Oh, some good questions there. Right. I got a funny feeling the liberal establishment in America will not have any choice. If he doesn't get in, I think that will lead to civil war. Just give you a very quick anecdote. A friend of mine's a pollster in Washington, and he always sends me his polls. And when it came to, he said in 2016, President Trump will win by about 2 or 3%, and he said on Brexit, Britain will win something like 52-48%. His polls are really, really good.
Yeah.
He said to me in 2020, Trump should win comfortably.
Yeah.
I wonder what happened.
Well, I maintain it was a steal. I maintain it was electoral fraud. There was certainly electoral interference when you look at the suppression of information from Hunter's laptop. But
yeah, sure.
But
no, to be honest, let's say in plain English, there was widespread ballot printing and widespread
Yeah.
ballot fraud.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's Arizona that he you know, when the polls closed before the postal ballots were counted, he was, as this guy had said, he'd comfortably won. But after the printers going brrr for about 5 hours, he'd lost. And I think as well, I think in Arizona, to have a recount, you need a sort of it needs to be as close to something like maybe 5%. And they printed enough ballots to make it 5.1%, so they didn't have a ballot. Trump lost Arizona by 11,000 votes. A subsequent audit has found 80,000 were invalid.
Yeah. In Pennsylvania, there were more votes than voters.
Yeah.
You know, there was toilets getting flooded. There were power cuts mysteriously happening. Boxes under tables getting produced. 2,000 American citizens were willing to put their neck on the line, facing 2 years of contempt of court, perjury, and they were all suppressed.
Yeah, sure.
Seb Gorka, he's like you. He's another Talk TV regular guest star.
Yeah.
He maintains it to this day. He's put his neck on the line.
Sure.
On Talk TV, on Mike Graham's show, the great Mike Graham, your friend and mine.
Yeah.
He appears on his show, and he's
my favourite guy. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike's your favourite guy. Absolutely. Absolutely. He's a legend.
So
if he gets in, what influence would that have on Starmer? Because let's presume Starmer's going to be the man. Where does Starmer go?
I think the phrase is when you from Starmer's point of view, when you're supping with the devil, bring a long spoon. I think they obviously in foreign affairs have shared interests, but Keir Starmer will be sort of pinching his nose and keeping his distance. I really can't see them cooperating.
The thing is, it's unavoidable. It's unavoidable. The special relationship means that the British Prime Minister is more or less head of a satellite. Can I get your views on the Tucker Carlson? I know we've probably got 5-10 minutes left. Thank you very much, Dave. Dave, Atherton 20. You've enjoyed his content, ladies and gentlemen, at Herd Immunity News. Check out his website.
Very kind. Very kind.
5-10 minutes or so, if that's okay with you, Dave.
No problems.
Tucker Carlson interviewed Vladimir Putin, the Russian president. It's now the most watched interview of all time, with close to, when you include the CCP viewers, regulars on Herd Immunity News, they would, you're going over 1 billion views on social media.
Views now, is it?
It's 1 billion views. You put on the X numbers, the YouTube numbers, and the CCP numbers, and all the other affiliates. Well, what did you think of that interview?
Sure. I thought in many ways it was dull, to be honest. Tucker Carlson wasn't very questioning, all right, he asked a question, but he didn't drill down on it. He didn't get Putin to explain himself, apart from when he dealt with the journalist. It's one of the things I've always tried to work out with Putin. Where is the line with it? Where is the line? I'm sure if you wrote to him and wrote, "Dear Vladimir, dear Vladimir, there's a pothole in my road. I demand you sort it out or you resign." He's I'm sure he said, "I want more capitalism in Russia." He's not going to object to that either. Where is his line for locking somebody up? Where is his line for wanting to murder people? I would like to have known that.
On his assertion that the UK is little more than a satellite of America, is he right?
We've always been seen to be America's aircraft carrier in the Atlantic.
Exactly.
I entirely agree with him. I think we are entirely, well, not entirely, but mainly reliant upon America for our long-term protection.
And his assertion, sorry, Dave, on his assertions on the fact that the sanctions that have been imposed have actually drawn Russia closer to China, and it's actually smashed the Western economy tremendously.
Sure. Well, fine. If you want the most broadest historical contexts of the war, and very briefly, I fact checked his assertion that Boris Johnson scuppered talks in Ukraine in April 2022.
Yes.
Fact check, verified, true. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Of course.
I found two sources, including one of the Guardian, where he said, we shouldn't be going ahead with this because we can't trust Putin. No, he said it in plain English.
Dave,
Yeah.
you're not suggesting Boris Johnson would lie?
Oh, I perish the thought.
Oh,
how dare you, sir?
no, no, exactly, sir. Exactly. Exactly.
I beg your pardon. Sorry, refresh my memory. Well, the question was.
Just on the Putin interview. Look, the characterization now is that it's given a lot of people food for thought. He's been able to state his case.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Sorry. I was going to give it the broadest historical context of what's going on here.
Oh well, Tucker did ask him about the territorial matters with Hungary, Poland.
And you mentioned China as well.
Yeah,
you mentioned China as well. The war in the Ukraine-Russian war is a travesty for us in Europe. That's an absolute travesty.
Yeah.
No, really, it's a hangover war from the 19th to the 20th century that's happening in the 21st century. What we should be doing as European fellows is looking at China as our main threat, to our existence and our culture and our way of life, and that we should be banding together. No, I think Putin suggested to Clinton that Russia join NATO.
Yeah.
China would be shitting itself if that was the case. No, China, I think, now has become such a pernicious, overbearing tyrant on the rest of the world that we will all have to band together, Russians and the West to take on the Chinese. And quite frankly, again, that's another country that needs regime change.
Good luck with that.
Along with Iran. So sorry to ask the boys of terms, but that's the thing I learned from that. We are kind of, in a sense, committing fratricide, by at our throats. This is something from the 1960s. It shouldn't be something from the 2020s. There is no doubt Putin, I think, is a ruthless, evil man to a greater or lesser extent. But are we going to get anything better out of Russia? I can't believe the level of corruption. I saw a program on Rebel News, and they interviewed this real estate broker in Davos. Virtually all the recent chalet purchases have been from Ukrainian politicians, and they ain't going to be cheap. That's the thing. They ain't going to be cheap.
Exactly. But can I just say this? David Curtin, leader of the Heritage Party, he's been on our show a few times.
Sure.
He put out a poll, and I think he got about 35 to 40,000 responses.
Blimey, that's good.
And he hits big. He hits big, does David. And 90% or 85% of the respondents, between a choice between Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, Joe Biden, and Vladimir Putin, who would they like to lead their country? Putin won by nearly 90%. Now, obviously, Joe Biden doesn't know what day it is. Rishi Sunak's a placed puppet who's a globalist. But Boris Johnson doesn't know his arse from his elbow half the time, where he's running around the world campaigning for endless wars and asking young Brits to go across and lay down their lives.
Well, sure.
Nothing.
Is the analysis here people like Putin because he gets shit done, or is it
he's got strong borders?
Yeah,
he's not for any of this woke agenda. He believes in his own bit. Now, I'm not saying it. I'm not saying that he's not an adversary, or at least in the UK, he's at least a competitor and someone to be watched and observed and respected. But the way that Trump dealt with him was to be cordial, do deals, not have wars, be respectful. Same with China. Same with Kim Jong-un. Is that not a more sensible approach rather than antagonize these people?
Sure, I know exactly what you mean. Just very briefly going back to what we were saying, is I would like to Tucker Carlson to have found out where was Putin's line. What kind of dissent is he prepared to put up with? Potholes, yes. More capitalism, probably. But where is his line? What motivation to go out and kill people who are in Britain? why? What was the reason that you got all that Novichok, whoever
Well,
it is? That's I would like to have found that out, to be sure.
can I just say that I'll put that point in there. But what is the right for the British government, for the establishment, for the courts and the laws to open our borders, to subject our citizens to similar death?
Subject our citizens to similar
outcomes, similar death.
Mm.
Whether it be the acid attackers, whether it be the murderer of Emily Jones, the Manchester bomber, the killers of Lee Rigby, these are acts against the people. Now
they are indeed. And
I'm not saying one two wrongs make a right. But when we have people trying to virtue signal in this country, like our leaders, our political leaders, and say, "Oh, Mr. Putin, bad. We have clean hands." I'm sorry, but that doesn't wash anymore with the public.
It doesn't, no. And this is the reason we need regime change. So we can have people who are held accountable for these things. We all make honest mistakes, and we can all put a hand up and say, "I'm sorry, I did wrong there. I mucked up." Yeah. But we need to get away from the buck passing, blame it on somebody else routine, and get the credit when things are going well. But it wasn't me really when things are going badly. No, what you're going to say is, look, I made a mess here. I'm going to clear my mess up, and things are going to improve. And this is how this is my plan to do it. First thing I would do when it comes to the Home Office, I'm obsessed with immigration. It is the single biggest problem facing this country. We as Sir William Braven said, it's an existential crisis.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And I really may need to take a day or two off and twist to get away from it all, because it's become a little bit a little bit all consuming these days. But we don't. I just got a funny feeling that we will not find out the worst until it's too late.
Yeah, Dave, we are looking for solutions. We are looking for answers, but we do have to confront the elephant in the room. And more of us, as you say, there's probably about 20% of the population that recognise it's an existential threat. Yeah. And there's maybe only 20% of that 20% that will do something about it, whether it's commentators, great commentators like yourself, whether it's little channels like Herd Immunity News. But we all have to band together. We have to put our differences aside and really band together. And voices that might have been seen as extreme right, I'm sorry, a lot of those guys have to be brought in and spoken to and dealt with.
I've got to say, I can't believe how far to the right the Overton window has gone. Unbelievable. If you said we're being invaded by all these immigrants 5-10 years ago, you would have lost your job. You can say that now. And the fact that when Suella Braverman said that we currently have an existential crisis, whereby the very essence of our culture and our race are being threatened.
Yeah.
Well, that sort of tiptoeing into maybe possibly even dark space for some people anyway. I think she's right. I agree with her. I will use the phrase myself. But we must be careful. We don't go too beyond that. We can't really get any blunter. I think the problem Sir Keir Starmer has is that if he sort of starts giving it the you should be cancelled routine, he's going to plummet in the polls. So silence is violence, and for him. And
Dave, we've covered a lot of subjects. We haven't touched on one thing, which is the reaction of the farmers throughout Europe. This is maybe direct democracy. We both salute them, sir. We both salute
absolutely.
them.
I saw a map of where all the farmers' protests are going on in Europe at the moment. They haven't quite put in Wales and
England
Kent
yet.
Kent
started
exactly. Well, the good news is the EU has completely capitulated to all their demands, and so now hopefully we've got the laws down now. Is that we're not going to put up with any more green rubbish. We're not going to put up with any more completely useless red tape laws. And finally, the people are back in control. I assume the EU knew full well that probably the majority of people supported the farmers, and that the farmers with their tractors could bring the whole country could bring their individual countries to a halt.
I mean, it's an act against the people, and it's an act of war against the people to cut away their food supply while flooding the country with mass immigration and take away your ability to have cheap energy and fuel. I mean, this is an act of state against the people.
Yeah, I know. It's not only that; it's all about security. You know, back in the 1930s, it was cheaper for us to import grain from Canada and also import beef and lamb from New Zealand and Australia than to produce our own, meat and lamb.
Sure,
our own beef and lamb. Sorry. And therefore, I think around 1938, something like that. So we only produced 20% of the food, produced 20% of our food. In 2024, that is now still something like 70%. We still produce 70% of our own food.
Yeah,
I'm a classical liberal free marketeer, and I don't like subsidies. I don't like barriers, and I don't like mercantilism. Because we probably are paying too much for our food. But from a security, security point of view, security of the country point of view, frankly, I've got to sort of pride a bit on the free market and say, look, we should be supporting our farmers. I think British farming is probably the most efficient in the world. When you're on the Russian steppe, probably buy 100 acres for £2. You buy 100 acres in this country, you're probably talking about, I don't know, 200,000 quid.
More people, I think, will be growing vegetables in the back garden. More people will be down to B&Q, get up the greenhouses like we used to do. Stack the larder, have your fire ready, have your log fire. I was out in a small Scottish town, and I've never seen as many coal fires burning. Actual coal fires burning in Scotland.
Takes you back.
Well, it does. I had my cloth cap on and my pigeons, carrying them down the street. But I think we're looking at these acts of civil disobedience. And I've covered the story quite a lot of the Blade Runners. I've never seen such action in all my days, not since the peasant revolt. Obviously, I wasn't back there in the 13th century. But you see the acts, and you and I won't publicly condone any of these acts. They're all terrible.
Of course. I could never.
Utterly disgraceful, butterly, truly, madly, deeply terrible. However,
condemnation.
In Sutton, a place you probably have visited once or twice in beautiful, leafy Surrey. 99.9% of Ulez cameras have been wiped out. Oh dear. Is that a smile I have on my face? Of course I don't. It's a grimace. It's a grimace. we had a report in Footscray. One little camera had been taken down for the 7th time.
Blimey.
Angle grinded to the ground. More and more people, they're either protesting through chopping them down, which is obviously very naughty, very wrong, very bad. We don't recommend anybody does it. Or they're getting placards. They're called blockers. And then there's the vanguards who are standing in front of the vans. Now, you're talking about thousands of people that are joining this, almost like you would go to the car boot fair on a Saturday or Sunday. Now, families are getting done up bringing sandwiches and holding placards. I mean, these people must be, this is the last bastion. This must be the last redoubt. Greatest people in our country are in the southeast of England.
The southeast and southwest of London.
Southwest,
Southwest, all the best people in the southwest, don't they?
Round about Hogarth's house, that sort of place. Yeah,
exactly. Yes. No, it's. I'm so pleased that maybe the 20% is growing. The people. Well, we can but hope. But there's nothing more effective than motivating somebody when it directly affects you. No, I really do hope that that this continues. I just don't understand why other people, while other people in other parts of London aren't doing the same. Well, I don't condone what they're doing or condone what they might do.
You're wondering why.
Yeah, you're wondering why. Yes, indeed.
Well, it's the counties. It's those people that actually want to withdraw from being part of Greater London. They're not interested. Kent, Surrey, other areas, parts of Essex possibly as well. other surrounding counties have no interest in being
Sure.
part of Greater London.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Well, it's the same in America, actually. There's parts of northern Canada, California that want to become a part of Idaho because California's a horrible liberal state. And Idaho's a bit more small C conservative. Exactly the same thing. You live in an area where the person you have nothing in common with the rulers, and you want to go to a place where you will have something in common with the rulers.
Indeed, they're heading to the border in Texas from all over America right now to help them defend the border.
I know, yeah. I know. And the great thing I'm most looking forward to in the American elections this year, presidential elections, is how many Hispanics and blacks vote for Trump.
Oh yeah,
because because the big thing about immigration is they're going to vote for us. Is what the left is looking at. But when they find out that they become a little bit more prosperous and start voting Republican or they start voting Conservative, they're going to have a rethink of their strategy.
absolutely.
So I don't really know, but sorry, we're rambling a bit here at the moment. But Dr. Rakib Hassan, the academic, respected academic, there's a poll in Luton of Luton Muslims, and 50% of Luton Muslims think there's too much immigration to this country.
Well, they're right.
We don't. That's called integration. When do you finally complain? When you think there's too many bloody foreigners in this country, that is when you finally become British.
Well, that's when the boats start heading back over the
exactly.
France. But as you know and I know, they're bloody stopping them. There's a lad trying to get back. He's living on the shingle. He's living under a boat, and the bugger's trying to go back, and they won't let him go. He's a legal migrant.
Apparently, it's a gentleman's agreement between the Home Office and the French Civil Service. There's no formal treaty. Well, what I would do is, I'd go down there and say to Matthew Flaming Rycroft, he's the permanent secretary, Matthew Double T Rycroft RIRY, sorry, no E, Croft 1. That's his email address. I'll tell you his Twitter address. So do send him your thoughts. And apparently there were 6 migrants who were heading back on the ferry. They basically paid their own fare, and when they got the French ball, they were sent back.
You couldn't make this up. And in line with that animal, that absolute animal who murdered three people in was it Nottingham?
Nottingham, yeah.
And he stabbed 3 others, two young kids and a janitor that intervened. He is now going to be put in HMP, I think is it Broadmoor? He's going to £150,000 a year will be spent on this man who will get full medical treatment, get all his scans, get all his dentistry done. He'll effectively have an ensuite bedroom, Dave, with 3 meals a day.
He's like a dog with terminal cancer. He should be put down.
I agree.
Yeah, he should be put down. This guy should never have been in this country in the first place, and in the second place, in the third place.
Yeah.
And he's gone on to kill 3 people. By the way, the janitor you mentioned, his brother, is a follower of mine.
Oh,
and I saw the grief in real time.
Oh. Well, listen, send them our condolences, please. And if you send me the link to his name, and I'll follow him, because all the victims need to speak out. You never really see these poor people getting a platform. Everybody else, every Tom, Dick, and Harry gets a platform for LGBT, racism, cultural Marxism. They all get on GB News and Talk TV, but the actual victims, the victims' families, nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right, Dave, anything, when are you coming up on our screens next? When can we enjoy seeing more?
I'm back on Talk TV. I say Talk TV, it's really Talk Radio. Just Google Talk Radio and listen. And we're available on DAB. We're on the app, and there's also a link you can click as well. And by the way, it's probably the most un-PC program, arguably one of the most un-PC programs in the country. We were once phoned up by a caller, and the guy challenged us and said, I bet you'd never talk about Chris Donald and Charlene Downs.
Right.
Chris MacDonald was a guy in Scotland, white guy in
Mhm.
Scotland, who was murdered by 4 or 5 Asian men.
Yes.
Sholling Downs was I couldn't remember his case. I remember Sholling Downs, the Blackpool girl who was 13 years of age when she was groomed by a kebab shop owners and his entourage, and was plied with alcohol and drugs and raped for years by them. Her body has never been recovered, and people speculate, being kebab owners, where her body went to. Oh, by the way, I've got worse stories than that of the way the girls have been abused. But anyway, we'll maybe say that for another day.
We will say that for another time. But it's channels like yours and voices like yours that will say these things. You've got the bottle, you've got the bravery, the balls to go and say all these things, and that's why we salute you. And we're always really pleased and delighted that you agree to come on to Herd Immunity News. So,
you're too kind. Anytime.
Yeah, all that remains for me to say is, Mr. David Atherton, thank you very much for appearing on Herd Immunity News.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invite.